Veteran and his dog found an abandoned armored truck. The truth inside will haunt you. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get into today's story. It was a late afternoon when a weary veteran, Jack Thompson, and his loyal German shepherd, Rex, stumbled upon something that would change their lives forever. They were hiking through the dense woods of Northern California, miles away from the nearest town, with only the sound of their boots crunching on the dry leaves and the occasional rustle of wind through the tall trees. Jack, once a combat medic, was used to the solitude. His time in the military had left him with more than a few scars, and now, after years of service, he found peace in nature, away from the bustling world. Rex, a well-trained dog who had served alongside Jack in search and rescue missions, trotted beside him, ever watchful. As they moved deeper into the woods, Rex's ears perked up, and he began to pull Jack toward something. Jack squinted ahead, unsure of what could catch his dog's attention so suddenly. It was then that he saw it. An old armored truck, partially hidden by a thick curtain of ivy and overgrown bushes. The truck's body was rusted, its once shiny surface now dulled by years of neglect, but something about it seemed oddly out of place in the middle of the forest. No one had been there for years, yet it seemed like the truck had been left behind in a hurry. Jack's curiosity piqued, and he approached cautiously, Rex growling softly as he stood by his side. The truck, which looked like it had once been used for transporting military equipment, had been abandoned long ago. The tires were flat, and the door was slightly ajar, as if beckoning them to come closer. Jack hesitated. It wasn't uncommon for people to leave things behind when they were in a rush, but something about this truck felt different. He had an uneasy feeling in his gut, but his instincts told him there was something important here, something worth uncovering. He opened the door, the rusty hinges groaning in protest, and stepped inside. The air inside was stale, filled with the smell of old leather and dust. As his eyes adjusted to the dim light, he noticed something strange, a locked metal box secured to the floor near the driver's seat. The box looked out of place, as if it had been carefully hidden away for a reason. Jack knelt beside it, his heart pounding. Rex growled again, his sharp senses picking up something Jack couldn't yet understand. Jack's fingers trembled as he tried to open the box. It was locked, but a quick search of the truck's cab revealed a key hidden beneath a seat cushion. With the key in hand, he unlocked the box, and the moment the lid creaked open, he felt a chill run down his spine. Inside, there were stacks of old papers, some yellowed with age, and a set of military blueprints. But the most shocking thing was a small, leather-bound journal that looked brand new, as if it had been placed there just days before. Jack carefully opened the journal. The pages inside were filled with handwritten notes about a secret operation from decades ago, one that involved the very truck they had found. It detailed a mission gone wrong, the loss of precious cargo, and a cover-up that had never been revealed to the public. As Jack read on, the words began to make sense. The truck had been part of a covert mission during the Cold War, transporting highly classified materials, including documents that could shake the very foundation of what people knew about history. Jack felt a growing sense of unease. What he had uncovered was far more than just an abandoned vehicle in the woods. It was a Pandora's box. He looked at Rex, who was now sitting quietly, his eyes fixed on the journal in Jack's hands. The truth inside the armored truck was not just a relic of the past. It was a secret that someone, somewhere, would do anything to keep buried. And as Jack closed the journal, he realized that his life, and Rex's, would never be the same again. As Jack carefully closed the leather-bound journal, he felt the weight of the discovery settle heavily on his shoulders. The sun had already begun to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows through the dense trees, and the chill in the air was beginning to bite. Rex, still alert, had not moved an inch, his sharp eyes watching Jack intently. Jack stood up slowly, the journal pressed against his chest, as the wind whispered through the forest, making the trees sway and creak like ancient sentinels. His mind raced. He knew this was far from just an abandoned truck with some old papers. What he had found was a link to something far darker and more dangerous than he had imagined. The truck, the journal, the secret mission, they all pointed to something that had been hidden for decades. But why? And who was still trying to bury it? Jack looked at Rex, his loyal companion, as if seeking guidance. The dog's amber eyes were fixed on him, calm yet resolute, as though Rex understood the gravity of the situation. Jack let out a heavy sigh, knowing what he had to do. He couldn't walk away from this now. He had to find out what the operation had really been about, and more importantly, what had happened to the people involved. With the journal in hand, Jack started making his way back to their camp. Rex followed closely, his steps light but sure. The forest seemed quieter now, as though it was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. As they neared their camp, Jack's thoughts were interrupted by a sudden rustling in the bushes. Rex immediately froze, his body tense. Jack's hand instinctively went to the knife at his belt, but he didn't draw it. Instead, he crouched down, trying to listen carefully. A shadow moved through the underbrush, and Jack's eyes narrowed. Was it someone else out here? Or was it just an animal? Then, the figure emerged. It was a man, tall and dressed in dark clothing, his face hidden by a hood. Jack's first instinct was to turn around and leave, but something made him stay. The man's presence felt off, like he was hiding something. The figure paused, noticing Jack and Rex. There was a brief moment of silence before the man spoke, his voice low and steady. "You shouldn't have come here." Jack didn't respond immediately. His mind was racing. Who was this man, and how did he know they were here? He looked at Rex, who was now growling softly, clearly uneasy. "What do you want?" Jack asked, his voice calm but firm. The man didn't answer right away. Instead, he took a step forward, his eyes flicking between Jack and the journal in his hand. "I'm warning you," the man continued. "You've uncovered something you don't understand. There are people who will do anything to keep it buried. People who don't want the truth coming out." Jack's grip on the journal tightened. This was it. The secret they had found was more than just a hidden treasure. It was something far more dangerous, something that someone was willing to kill to protect. The man's warning echoed in his mind as he looked at the journal. "Who are you?" Jack asked. The man didn't answer. Instead, he turned and began to walk away, disappearing into the shadows of the trees. Jack stood there for a moment, trying to process what had just happened. But Rex wasn't done. The dog's body was still tense, his gaze fixed on the spot where the man had vanished. Jack's heart pounded in his chest as he realized that this was just the beginning. The journal, the armored truck, the mysterious figure, it was all connected, and Jack was now in the middle of something far bigger than he had ever imagined. Rex barked, snapping Jack out of his thoughts. Jack took a deep breath and looked around, his senses alert. He knew he had to be careful. Someone was watching them. Someone who didn't want the truth to get out. He grabbed the journal and turned toward the camp. He needed to figure out what to do next, but one thing was certain, they were not alone. As they settled in for the night, the forest seemed to close in around them. The wind howled through the trees, and the sounds of the night were punctuated by Rex's occasional growl. Jack lay in his tent, unable to sleep. His mind kept racing. What was the mission about? Why had it been covered up? And who was the man who had warned them? These questions haunted him, but he couldn't find the answers. Not yet. As the hours passed, Jack's thoughts drifted back to the journal. What other secrets did it hold? What if the truth inside could change? Everything. It was a risk, but Jack knew that he had to find out. He couldn't leave this mystery unsolved. As the first light of dawn crept through the trees, Jack packed up their camp, determined to follow the trail wherever it led. With Rex by his side, he set off deeper into the woods, ready to uncover whatever secrets lay ahead. The morning sun had barely risen, casting a soft golden light across the dense forest as Jack and Rex made their way deeper into the woods. The events of the previous night weighed heavily on Jack's mind. He had barely slept, haunted by the warning from the mysterious man and the chilling discovery of the journal. The secrets hidden within the pages were still a puzzle, but one thing was clear, the danger was real, and they were already in too deep. Rex trotted by his side, his body low and alert, sensing that the air had changed. Jack tightened his grip on the journal, the faint rustling of the pages echoing in his mind. They needed to find answers, but the deeper they ventured, the more Jack felt the looming presence of something unseen, something watching them. As they trudged forward, the forest seemed to close in around them, the trees growing thicker, their branches intertwining like a natural barrier. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves beneath their feet and the distant calls of birds. It was as if the woods themselves were trying to hold them back. Jack stopped for a moment, looking around. There was no sign of anyone else, just the dense woods and the heavy silence. But his instincts told him they were not alone. Rex's ears perked up again, his eyes scanning the shadows between the trees. Jack's hand went instinctively to his belt, where his knife was sheathed. He had learned to trust his gut in situations like this. Something wasn't right. The air felt thick with tension, as though the very forest was holding its breath. They continued, Jack leading the way with Rex by his side. As they reached a small clearing, Jack's eyes caught something out of place, a flash of metal through the underbrush. He motioned for Rex to stay close, his heart pounding in his chest. Slowly, they moved toward the source of the glint. There, half hidden in the brush, was a small, rusted door embedded in the side of a hill, almost as if it had been deliberately concealed. It was the kind of door you'd expect to find in a forgotten bunker or hidden shelter. Jack's breath caught in his throat. Could this be connected to the armored truck they had found? Could this be another part of the mystery that had already consumed them? Rex whined softly, stepping back slightly, his nose twitching. Jack knelt beside the door, examining it closely. The metal was old and corroded, but there was no mistaking the shape. It was a secure hatch, one designed to keep things hidden. With a deep breath, Jack tried the handle. It turned easily in his hand, almost as though it had been waiting for someone to open it. The door creaked open, revealing a dark, narrow passage leading down into the earth. Jack hesitated for a moment, the weight of the unknown pressing down on him. But he knew there was no turning back now. This was it. This was the key to the mystery. He motioned for Rex to follow, and together, they descended into the darkness. The air inside the passage was thick with dust and musty, like the smell of something long forgotten. Jack's flashlight flickered briefly before shining a beam of light on the walls, which were lined with concrete. It looked like a bunker, a place that had been sealed off for decades. As they moved deeper, Jack's heart raced. He could feel the presence of something ancient, something buried here for a reason. They reached a large, open room at the end of the tunnel. It was dimly lit by a single overhead light, and the walls were lined with shelves filled with old crates and boxes. But in the center of the room was something far more intriguing. A large, wooden chest, covered in dust and cobwebs, sat in the middle of the floor. Jack's pulse quickened. Could this be the treasure they had been searching for? Or was it something far darker? He approached the chest cautiously, his hand on the knife at his belt. Rex stood beside him, his body tense, waiting for a command. With a grunt, Jack knelt and slowly lifted the lid of the chest. Inside, there were stacks of old, yellowed papers and what appeared to be a collection of maps. But it was the item resting on top of the pile that caught Jack's attention. It was a small, wooden box, intricately carved, with strange symbols etched into its surface. Jack carefully lifted the box from the chest, his hands trembling. The symbols were unlike anything he had ever seen before. They looked almost ancient, as if they had been carved by someone from a time long past. He turned the box over in his hands, searching for a way to open it. Rex's growl broke the silence, low and threatening. Jack's heart skipped a beat as he turned to see what had caused the dog's unease. Standing in the doorway to the room was the man from the previous night. His face was partially obscured by the shadows, but there was no mistaking the threat in his eyes. "You shouldn't have opened that," the man said, his voice low and filled with menace. Jack stood up slowly, the box still in his hands. "Who are you?" he demanded, his grip tightening. The man took a step forward, his hand resting on the gun at his hip. "I told you to stay away," he said, his voice colder than the night air. "Now you've crossed a line, and you'll regret it." Jack's heart pounded in his chest as he backed away from the man, his mind racing. The situation had escalated quickly, and it was clear that whatever secrets lay within the wooden box were far more dangerous than he had ever imagined. Jack's hand gripped the wooden box tightly as the man advanced into the dimly lit room. His heart raced, each beat thundering in his chest as the stranger's words echoed in the silence. "I told you to stay away," the man repeated, his voice colder than the stone walls around them. The air between them seemed to grow heavier, and Jack could feel the tension rising. "Rex," ever the loyal companion, growled low and menacing, his body tense as he stood between Jack and the stranger. Jack's mind raced. Who was this man, and why was he so determined to stop him from uncovering the truth? The stranger's presence was overwhelming, a constant reminder that the mystery Jack had stumbled upon was not just some forgotten relic. It was dangerous. What do you want? Jack demanded, his voice steady despite the fear creeping in. The man didn't answer immediately. Instead, his cold eyes locked onto the wooden box in Jack's hands, his gaze intense, as though willing Jack to put it down. Jack tightened his grip. I don't know what this is, but I'm not backing down, he said, his voice low but firm. The man took another step forward, his hand resting on the gun at his side. You don't understand what you're dealing with, he said, his tone filled with a warning that made the hairs on the back of Jack's neck stand on end. You've already found something that was meant to stay buried. People are going to come after you now. You don't want to be in the middle of this. Jack's pulse quickened. He could feel the weight of the man's words, but he also knew he couldn't turn back. Whatever secrets lay inside the wooden box, he had to find out what they were. I don't care about your threats, Jack snapped, standing his ground. I need to know the truth. Rex stepped forward, his growl deepening as he bared his teeth at the man. Jack could sense the danger in the air, but he also felt something else, a sense of resolve. He wasn't going to back down, not now, not after everything he had already discovered. The stranger paused, sizing Jack up. For a moment, there was a flicker of hesitation in his eyes, but it quickly disappeared. You don't understand, he said, almost as though speaking to himself. You're in over your head. The truth you're chasing isn't something you want to find. Jack's eyes narrowed. Tell me what's going on. Who are you? The man let out a deep sigh, his shoulders slumping slightly, as if the weight of his secret had become too much to bear. I'm the one they sent to clean up the mess, he said quietly. This operation, the truck, the box, it was all part of something bigger. Something that was never meant to be uncovered. Jack took a step forward, his voice urgent. What do you mean? What happened here? The man shook his head, his expression darkening. It was a cover-up. A mission during the Cold War. A mission that went wrong. There were things in that truck, things that were never meant to see the light of day. And now you found it. Jack's mind spun as the man's words sank in. A Cold War mission? A cover-up? What kind of truth was hidden in this small, abandoned truck? He had thought it was just an old relic, but now it seemed like it was tied to something far more sinister, something with the power to shake the world. What's in the box? Jack asked, his voice barely a whisper. The man's eyes flickered to the box in Jack's hands. For a brief moment, Jack saw something in his eyes, fear maybe, before it was quickly masked by a hardened resolve. You don't want to know? He said, his voice low. There are people who would do anything to keep this quiet. You're already in danger just by having that box. Jack felt a surge of determination. I'm not backing down, he said, holding the box out slightly, as if daring the man to try and take it from him. The stranger's face hardened, and for a moment, it seemed like he was ready to strike. But then, with a frustrated growl, he turned away. Fine, he muttered. But you'll regret it. With that, he strode toward the door, his footsteps heavy on the stone floor. Jack stood frozen, his heart pounding in his chest. The man had left him with more questions than answers. But one thing was clear, whatever was in that box was powerful enough to scare even the people who had been involved. Rex whined softly, sensing the tension in the air. Jack took a deep breath and turned back to the chest, his fingers trembling as he reached for the box again. He didn't know what was inside, but he had a feeling that it would be the key to everything. With the box in hand, Jack and Rex made their way out of the room, their footsteps echoing in the dark, empty tunnel. The forest outside was quiet, but Jack couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. As they walked back to the surface, the weight of the situation pressed down on him. This wasn't just about finding hidden treasures or uncovering secrets. It was about survival. Whoever was after this information was dangerous, and they weren't going to stop until they had it back. Jack knew he had to act quickly. The truth inside the box had the potential to change everything, but it also had the potential to destroy him. And that was a risk he wasn't sure he was ready to take. The forest felt eerily still as Jack and Rex made their way back toward the truck. The night had fallen completely now, and the only sounds were the occasional rustling of the trees in the wind. Jack's heart was racing, not just from the adrenaline, but from the growing realization that the journal, the truck, the mysterious man. Everything was leading him to something far more dangerous than he had anticipated. He glanced down at Rex, who was walking just ahead of him, his posture tense as if the dog sensed the same threat. Jack couldn't shake the feeling that they were being followed, that unseen eyes were watching their every move. Rex stopped suddenly, his body stiff, his ears pricked up in alert. Jack paused as well, instinctively reaching for the knife at his side. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up, and he scanned the dark woods, trying to pick out any movement in the shadows. But there was nothing, just the quiet hum of the night. Jack exhaled, trying to calm his nerves. It was as if the tension in the air had built up too much. But before he could take another step, a voice cut through the silence. "I told you." The man's voice was low, harsh, and close. Jack whirled around, his hand instinctively going to the knife. There, standing between the trees, was the stranger. He had followed them, just as Jack had feared. "I didn't want to do this," the man continued, his eyes cold and unblinking. "But you're too far in now. You have no idea what you've uncovered. No idea what's coming." Jack's grip on the knife tightened. "Stay away," he warned. Rex growled low, his body now fully turned toward the man. "This is bigger than you," the stranger said, his voice trembling with something. Anger? Fear? "You think this is about some hidden treasure? It's not. This is about power. The kind of power that can change the world, and people will kill to protect it. Including you." Jack took a step forward, his pulse quickening. "You know more than you're saying," he demanded. "Tell me what this is all about." The man took a slow step forward, his eyes flickering toward the box that Jack still clutched in his hands. "You don't want to know," he said. Softly. "You really don't." Jack was done with the secrets, the half-truths. "I'm not afraid of you," he said, his voice steady. "Tell me what's going on." The man hesitated, then let out a deep sigh, his shoulders slumping as if the weight of the situation had finally broken him. "It's the government," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "They tried to bury it, to make sure no one would ever find out. But you're already too far in. You opened the box. That means they'll come for you. And they'll do whatever it takes to keep this from getting out." Jack frowned. "Who's they? Who's trying to stop me?" The man's eyes flickered to Rex, then back to Jack. "The people who created this mess. They'll stop at nothing to protect it. And now you've seen it, you've touched it. They'll come for you, for the box, for the journal. They'll want everything back." Jack's mind was reeling. He had thought this was just about an old truck, a secret from the past. But now it was clear that this was something far bigger, something that involved people who were willing to kill to keep the truth hidden. The man stepped forward once more, his eyes dark and urgent. "You don't understand," he said, his voice shaking. "This isn't just about money or treasure. It's about control. It's about power. They've kept it hidden for decades, but now you've found it, and you've opened Pandora's box." Jack's heart raced as the weight of the situation hit him. The journal, the box, the truck, all of it was part of something much more dangerous than he had imagined. And now, someone was coming for him. "What do I do now?" Jack asked, his voice hoarse. "There's nothing you can do," the man replied. "You're already in too deep. They'll come for you, and they'll make sure you never get the chance to tell anyone what you've found." The man turned to leave, but before he could disappear into the darkness, Jack called out, "Wait. Who are you?" The man paused, looking back over his shoulder. "I'm just a messenger," he said cryptically, "but I wouldn't trust anyone who's still involved in this. You're better off walking away, if you can. You don't want to be part of this fight." Jack watched the man disappear into the woods, his words lingering in the air. Was it too late to walk away? The box in his hand seemed heavier now, as if it carried the weight of everything that was about to happen. Rex whined softly, and Jack took a deep breath. He had come this far, and now he had no choice but to keep going. But the warning was clear. Whoever was behind this secret, behind the truck, behind the box, they wouldn't stop until it was all buried again. And Jack, for better or worse, had just become part of the battle. Jack and Rex continued their journey through the woods, the weight of the journal and the wooden box hanging heavily on Jack's shoulders. He had been given no choice but to follow this twisted trail, yet the deeper he delved into it, the more he realized that the stakes were far higher than he had ever imagined. As the night grew colder, Jack couldn't shake the image of the mysterious man's warning from his mind. He was now a part of something much bigger than himself, something that had been hidden away for decades. The deeper they walked, the more Jack began to feel that they were being watched. He couldn't pinpoint exactly why, but it was as though the trees themselves were closing in on him. The path was narrow and overgrown, the shadows dancing ominously at the edge of his vision. Rex was walking just ahead of him, his ears alert, his body stiff, and Jack knew that his dog could sense the tension too. The silence of the forest was deafening, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves underfoot and the distant hoot of an owl. But even that seemed out of place in the thick silence surrounding them. Jack's grip tightened on the journal. The man had been right about one thing. There were people who would stop at nothing to keep the truth hidden. Whoever was behind this, they wouldn't just let Jack walk away with the secrets he had uncovered. As Jack's mind raced, Rex suddenly froze, his nose twitching. Jack stopped immediately, his heart skipping a beat. Rex's growl broke the silence, deep and guttural, as his amber eyes scanned the shadows ahead. Jack's pulse quickened as he instinctively reached for his knife. A figure appeared from the darkness between the trees, slowly stepping into the dim light. Jack's eyes narrowed, but he didn't pull his knife. The figure was tall, cloaked in a dark jacket, with a face half covered by the shadows. It was impossible to tell if it was the same man who had warned him earlier, but Jack didn't need to wait to find out. This was trouble. "I told you to stay away." The man's voice rang out, sharp and menacing. It was him. The same man. Jack could feel the tension thickening in the air. He was done being threatened. "Why don't you tell me what's going on?" Jack demanded, stepping forward. "Who are you really? And who else is involved in this?" The man remained silent for a moment, his eyes flicking to Rex, and then to the box in Jack's hands. "You don't understand," the man said, his voice low but urgent. "You've seen too much. If you keep going, they'll come for you. And they'll make sure no one finds out about any of this." Jack's heart pounded in his chest, but his resolve only hardened. "I'm not afraid of them," Jack said. "And I'm not walking away. Tell me what this is about." The man's eyes darkened. "It's bigger than you can imagine. This was never supposed to be uncovered. It was supposed to stay buried, and now you've opened it. You've made yourself a target. You don't even know what you're up against." Jack felt a pang of unease, but it wasn't enough to make him retreat. He wasn't going to turn back now. "I'm already involved," Jack said. "I found the journal, the box, the truck. I want to know who's behind this. Who are they?" The man's gaze shifted to the box again, and Jack could see his jaw tighten. The man took a slow step forward. "You really want to know?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "You've already started something that can't be undone. You have no idea how deep this goes." Jack clenched his jaw. "I'll take my chances," he said firmly. The man let out a deep breath, like he was weighing the decision to reveal more. Finally, he spoke again, his voice edged with bitterness. "It's a network," he said. "A group of powerful people, and they've been running things behind the scenes for decades. The truck, the documents, the operation, they were part of a much larger plan. To manipulate events, to keep certain things hidden. But the truth, it's too dangerous for them to let out." Jack listened intently, his mind racing as the man's words sank in. Manipulating events? What kind of events? The man hesitated before responding, his eyes darting around as if checking for eavesdroppers. Wars, financial crashes, political shifts. They have the power to shape the world in ways you can't even comprehend. And they've been doing it for years, pulling strings behind closed doors, making sure that the right people stay in power. This was all part of their design. Jack's stomach churned. He had thought this was a simple mission, a relic from the past that had been forgotten. But now it seemed like he had stumbled into a conspiracy that could change everything. "So what's in the box?" Jack demanded, holding it out slightly. "What's the secret?" The man's eyes flickered with uncertainty, and for a moment, Jack thought he might actually tell him. But instead, the man stepped back. "That's something you'll have to find out for yourself," he said, his voice hardening. "If you don't, they'll come for you. And they'll come for that box." Jack's grip tightened. He wasn't going to let go of the box, not now. The man turned to leave, but Jack wasn't done. "Wait," Jack called. "What's your part in this?" The man paused, but didn't turn around. "I was once one of them," he said, his voice laced with regret. "But I couldn't do it anymore. So now I'm trying to stop it." And with that, he disappeared into the trees, leaving Jack standing there, more confused and determined than ever. Jack stood still for a moment, his mind spinning. He had learned nothing concrete, but everything had changed. The weight of the box in his hands felt heavier than ever. The answers he sought were out there. But now, they felt more dangerous than he had ever imagined. As Jack stood in the dim light of the forest, the man's words echoed in his mind. "They'll come for you." The warning was clear, but Jack wasn't sure who they were or what they truly wanted. All he knew now was that he couldn't stop, couldn't walk away. The secret he had uncovered was far too important to let go. Rex, still alert, nudged his leg, bringing Jack back to the present. The cold night air felt heavier now, as if the very atmosphere was charged with the weight of what lay ahead. The man who had warned him was gone, but his presence lingered, a reminder of the danger closing in on them. Jack turned and looked at the journal in his hand and the small wooden box that still felt too heavy. What was inside that box? Why was it so important? And what had been hidden all these years, waiting for someone to stumble across it? As Jack's thoughts swirled, Rex growled softly, pulling Jack's attention back to the path ahead. The forest was eerily quiet, and Jack's instincts told him they weren't alone. But there was no movement, no sound, just the wind and the occasional rustling of leaves. "Stay close, boy," Jack muttered, his hand instinctively going to the knife at his side. They had to keep moving, but Jack's mind raced. Every step felt like it was leading them deeper into a trap. Still, there was no turning back. As they moved through the woods, Jack's thoughts went back to the armored truck, the journal, and the strange man's cryptic words. The mission from the Cold War, the secret that had been hidden away. It was all connected, but how? Jack had to know. They pressed forward, the dark trees casting long shadows over the path. Then, in the distance, a light flickered through the trees. Jack stopped, heart racing. It wasn't much, but it was enough to catch his attention. A faint light, maybe a campfire or a lantern, glowed weakly through the trees. Someone was out there. Jack motioned for Rex to stay close, and they carefully made their way toward the light, moving quietly through the thick underbrush. As they got closer, Jack saw figures gathered around the fire. There were 3 of them, standing by an old abandoned cabin. The figures didn't seem to notice Jack or Rex yet, but Jack's instincts were on high alert. The men were speaking in low voices, but Jack could catch bits of their conversation. "We can't let him get away with it," one of them said. "He's got the journal. He's got everything we need." Jack's heart skipped a beat. The journal. They were talking about him. And the fact that they were waiting for him made it clear they had been tracking him all along. "What about the box?" another man asked. "Do we know where it is?" Jack froze, his breath catching in his throat. They knew about the box too. Whatever was inside it, it was important enough to make these men desperate. He couldn't let them find him, not yet. He had to find out what was inside the box first. Jack signaled Rex to stay still and motioned for him to move carefully to the left, away from the group. The dog obeyed without hesitation, his sharp eyes scanning the area, his senses on high alert. Jack felt the weight of the situation bear down on him. The men around the campfire were part of something bigger, something dangerous. He had to get answers, but if they caught him now, he might never get the chance. They carefully made their way around the edge of the camp, staying out of sight. Jack's mind raced, trying to plan his next move. The men had been waiting for him, and now that they knew he had the journal and the box, they wouldn't stop until they got them back. He needed to stay one step ahead. As they neared the back of the cabin, Jack heard one of the men mention something about the deal. "We've got to get the journal and the box before they can use it," the man said. "Once we have it, we'll know everything. We'll control everything." Jack's stomach churned. This was it. Whatever secret was hidden in that journal and box wasn't just about the past. It was about the future. And whoever controlled that information would have the power to change everything. Jack could feel the pressure building inside him. He had to find the truth. He couldn't let these men win. But as he took a step forward, his foot caught a loose branch, snapping it underfoot. The sound was small, but it was enough. "Did you hear that?" one of the men asked, his voice suddenly sharp. Jack's heart raced as he froze, hoping they hadn't heard him. But Rex was already moving, his ears pricked up, sensing the danger before Jack had even realized. "Get him," the man shouted. Jack turned and ran, his legs pumping as fast as they could carry him. He could hear the men shouting behind him, their footsteps heavy in the dirt. Rex ran ahead, leading the way as Jack followed, the journal, and the box clutched tightly in his hands. They ran through the woods, the men close behind, but Jack knew they couldn't keep running forever. He had to fight. He had to find a way to stop them from getting what they wanted. With every breath, Jack could feel the weight of the secret growing heavier. Whoever these men were, they had no idea what they were dealing with. But Jack did, and he was going to make sure the truth stayed hidden, no matter what. Jack's breath came in heavy gasps as he and Rex tore through the thick underbrush, the sounds of their pursuers growing louder behind them. The men were relentless, shouting orders to each other as they pushed their way through the forest, closing the distance with each passing second. Jack could hear their heavy footsteps and the rustling of branches as they stumbled through the woods. He had to keep moving, had to stay ahead of them. The journal and the wooden box clutched tightly in his hands were more than just a secret now. They were the only things standing between him and those who would stop at nothing to get them back. As they ran, Jack could feel the weight of the forest pressing down on him. The trees seemed to blur together, their shadows stretching long in the fading light. Rex ran ahead, his ears flat against his head, leading the way with an almost unnatural precision. Jack followed close behind, his thoughts a whirlwind of fear and adrenaline. They needed to find somewhere to hide, but the forest felt endless, the trail never-ending. The men were still gaining on them. Jack's mind raced. What had he uncovered? What was inside the box that made it so valuable? The man had said it was about power, that it could change everything. But Jack couldn't make sense of it all. He needed answers, but he also knew he couldn't let these men catch up. They had no idea what they were up against. He was determined to make sure they didn't get their hands on what he had found. Suddenly, Rex stopped. His body tensed, his nose twitching as he sniffed the air. Jack's heart skipped a beat. They had come to a clearing, a small, almost hidden space in the forest where the trees parted just enough to let in a faint light from the setting sun. It was the perfect place to hide, but it also felt wrong, as if something else was waiting for them. Jack crouched low, trying to steady his breathing. He signaled for Rex to stay close. The dog obeyed, his eyes darting around the clearing as if sensing something Jack couldn't see. The sound of footsteps drew closer, too close. Jack's pulse quickened. There was no time left. The men were only a few yards away. Without thinking, Jack darted behind a large boulder, pulling Rex with him. He held his breath, hoping the men wouldn't see them. From behind the rock, Jack could hear the men approaching. Their voices were muffled but growing louder as they circled the clearing, searching for any sign of their quarry. Jack's heart pounded in his chest, every muscle tensed in anticipation. Rex was perfectly still beside him, his ears twitching, waiting for Jack's next move. Then, just as suddenly as the men had appeared, the forest fell silent. Jack held his breath, straining to hear any sign of movement. He couldn't let them get away with this. He had to stay one step ahead. The seconds stretched on, feeling like hours. Jack's mind raced. The men were getting closer, but they still hadn't seen him or Rex. The clearing was their only chance, but it was also their most dangerous. One wrong move, and they would be trapped. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the men's voices grew faint as they moved off in a different direction, heading further into the woods. Jack exhaled slowly, relief washing over him. They had made it, for now. He waited until the sounds of the men had completely faded away before he stood up, his legs aching from crouching so long. Rex looked up at him, his body relaxed now, his tail wagging slightly, as if to say it was safe to move. Jack glanced around the clearing once more, his eyes scanning the trees for any sign of danger. They were alone. For now. But Jack knew they couldn't stay there forever. He looked down at the journal and the wooden box in his hands. Whatever was inside was more than just a hidden treasure. It was a key to something that could change the world, something dangerous enough that people would kill for it. The weight of that knowledge settled heavily on his chest. He couldn't let it fall into the wrong hands. Jack turned to Rex, who was still watching him intently. "We have to keep moving," Jack muttered. "We can't stop until we know everything." Rex gave a soft whine, as if in agreement, before trotting ahead, guiding Jack deeper into the forest. Jack followed, determined to get to the bottom of the mystery, but knowing it wouldn't be easy. There was a darkness that was following them, and it was only a matter of time before it caught up. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that they were running out of time. The secret he had uncovered was powerful, but it was also deadly. He had to find a way to uncover the full truth before it was too late. The forest had grown quiet once more, but Jack knew it was only temporary. He could feel the weight of the situation settling on his shoulders like a heavy cloak. Rex led the way, his ears perked up, nose to the ground, sensing something that Jack couldn't quite put his finger on. The brief moments of silence were interrupted only by the occasional crack of a twig underfoot or the rustling of leaves as Jack made his way deeper into the forest, away from the dangers they had just narrowly escaped. Jack glanced down at the wooden box and the journal that he still held tightly in his hands. He had to figure out what they meant. What was so dangerous that someone would go to these lengths to keep it hidden? The journal's pages were filled with cryptic notes about operations from decades ago, operations that had never seen the light of day, erased from history. But why? Why had they gone to such extremes to bury the truth? Every step they took seemed to lead them further into the heart of the mystery. As the light faded, Jack felt the tension rise again. The forest, once so peaceful, now seemed to close in around them, as though it were hiding something darker beneath its trees. The feeling was almost suffocating. Rex stopped suddenly, his body rigid. Jack froze, his heart pounding as he looked around. He could sense it too now, a presence. Someone was out there, just beyond the tree line. He held his breath, hoping they wouldn't be noticed, but he knew that wasn't likely. They had already been spotted once. The men chasing them weren't going to stop until they got what they wanted. Jack could feel the fear creeping up his spine, but it was quickly replaced by determination. He couldn't keep running. Not anymore. He had to confront whatever was out there. Rex looked up at Jack, his amber eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. It was as if the dog knew what needed to be done. Jack gave him a small nod, signaling for Rex to stay close. Together, they moved toward the edge of the clearing, careful to stay out of sight. Every step felt like it could be their last. Jack's mind raced as they approached the shadows. His pulse quickened as he tried to prepare for whatever confrontation awaited them. Suddenly, the shadows shifted. A figure emerged from behind a large oak tree, moving silently as if it had been waiting for them. Jack's hand went instinctively to his knife, but he didn't draw it. Not yet. The figure stepped into the clearing, and Jack's eyes widened. It wasn't one of the men who had been chasing them. It was a woman. She was tall, with sharp features, her face hidden beneath a dark hood. She stood still for a moment, her eyes scanning the area before settling on Jack. There was something unsettling about the way she moved, graceful, yet purposeful. "You're far from where you need to be," the woman said, her voice cold and calculating. "I told you, you shouldn't have opened it." Jack didn't flinch. "Who are you?" he demanded, trying to keep his voice steady despite the fear that threatened to creep in. The woman didn't answer immediately. Instead, she took a step closer, her eyes narrowing as she studied him. "You don't know what you've gotten yourself into," she said softly. "That box, that journal, they're not just relics of the past. They're part of something much bigger. And now that you've found them, they're going to come for you." Jack's mind was spinning. He had heard this before, but now it was starting to make sense. The stakes were higher than he had imagined. "Who are you?" Jack repeated, this time more urgently. "Why are you warning me?" The woman's lips curled into a faint smile, but it wasn't a comforting one. "I'm here to make sure you don't get any further," she said. "I've been sent to stop you before you expose what's been hidden. You're already in too deep. You can't undo it now." Jack's heart sank. The realization hit him like a punch to the gut. Whoever she was, whatever she represented, she wasn't on his side. She had been sent to stop him from uncovering the truth. He tightened his grip on the box, the journal pressed against his chest. "I'm not backing down," Jack said, his voice firm despite the growing anxiety in his chest. The woman's smile faded, and her eyes darkened. "You don't have a choice," she said, her tone sharp and final. "This is bigger than you." Without warning, she moved toward him, swift and precise. Jack took a step back, his instincts kicking in. Rex growled low, stepping in front of Jack, his fur bristling. The woman stopped, her gaze flicking to the dog before returning to Jack. "You think you can protect yourself?" she asked, her voice dripping with disdain. Jack didn't answer. He knew he couldn't protect himself alone, not from someone like her. But he also knew he couldn't let her stop him. "Not now. Stay back," Jack warned, his voice low but steady. "I'm not afraid of you." The woman's eyes glinted with something dark, something cold. "You will be," she said, taking another step forward. "You've already crossed the line. You'll wish you never found that journal. You'll wish you never found the box." Jack's grip on the journal tightened. Whatever she was, whatever she represented, she was a part of the same dark world that had been hiding the truth for years. And Jack wasn't about to back down now. He had come too far to stop. Rex growled again, his body tense, and Jack knew that the next move was his. Whatever happened next, he had to keep going, had to uncover the truth before it was lost forever. Jack's heart raced as the woman advanced toward him, every instinct in his body screaming at him to run. But he couldn't. Not now. Rex was already in position, standing between Jack and the woman, his body tense, his growl a deep warning. Jack's hand tightened around the box. He wasn't about to let it go, not without answers. The woman's eyes were cold, calculating, and she didn't seem the least bit afraid. "You don't understand what you're dealing with," she said again, her voice cutting through the tense silence. "This isn't a game. These things, the journal, the box, they're dangerous. You have no idea the power they hold." Jack's mind raced. She had said it before, but it wasn't sinking in. What was she talking about? What was so powerful about a few old papers and a wooden box? "Who are you working for?" Jack demanded, his voice steady despite the pounding of his heart. The woman paused, her expression unreadable. "I work for the people who make sure that these secrets stay buried," she replied, her voice low. "You don't get to bring this back into the light. You don't get to rewrite history." Jack took a step forward, his eyes never leaving hers. "I don't care who you work for. I'm not backing down. I want answers. I want to know what's in that box and what it means." The woman's lips curled into a smile, but it wasn't friendly. "You really think you can handle it?" she asked, almost mockingly. "You think you can handle the truth?" Jack's jaw tightened. "I'll handle whatever comes," he said, his voice firm. Rex growled again, his muscles coiled like a spring. The woman's smile faded, and for the first time, Jack saw a flicker of something in her eyes, something close to fear. She straightened, her posture rigid. "You don't know what you're asking for," she said, her tone colder now. "The people who are looking for that box, they don't play by the same rules. They'll do whatever it takes to get it back. And you're not prepared for that. No one is." Jack didn't flinch. He had come too far, learned too much. There was no turning back now. "Then they'll have to go through me," Jack said, his voice steady and filled with resolve. The woman stared at him for a long moment, as if weighing his words, and then, without another word, she turned and disappeared into the darkness of the woods. Jack stood frozen, his breath coming in shallow gasps. His mind was racing, but he didn't have time to think about it now. The woman's warning still hung in the air, heavy with threat. The truth, whatever it was more dangerous than he could have ever imagined. Rex whined softly, his head turning toward the darkness where the woman had vanished. Jack took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. He knew they couldn't stay here, not with danger so close. "Let's go, boy," he said quietly, motioning for Rex to follow. They had to move. They couldn't let this woman, or whoever was chasing them, get their hands on the box or the journal. But as Jack took his first step, something felt off. The woods, which had been eerily quiet, now seemed to hum with a strange energy. Jack looked around, trying to pinpoint the source of the unease, but the trees remained still, their branches barely rustling in the wind. Rex's fur stood on end, and his ears twitched nervously. Something wasn't right. They weren't alone. Jack's senses were on high alert now. He had to be careful, had to move quickly but cautiously. He looked at Rex, who was scanning the trees, his body tense, waiting for a signal. Jack's grip on the box tightened. He couldn't let anyone take it. They had come too far. The shadows in the woods grew longer as the night deepened, and Jack could feel the weight of the secret they were carrying pressing down on him. Whatever was inside that box, it was bigger than anything he had ever imagined. The stakes were higher than ever, and the danger was real. As they moved deeper into the forest, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, hunted even. He couldn't afford to make any more mistakes. Every move had to count. Rex's growls grew louder now, and Jack knew they were getting closer to something, or someone. His mind raced, trying to anticipate what was coming, but it was impossible to know. All he could do was keep moving forward, keep the box safe, and try to stay one step ahead of whoever was after them. The woods seemed to close in tighter with every step, the trees pressing in from all sides. Jack's breath quickened as he realized they were surrounded. The feeling of being watched intensified, and Jack felt a cold knot of fear form in his stomach. He stopped, his senses on full alert. Rex was silent now, his body stiff with tension. Then, in the distance, Jack saw something moving, a shadow against the trees, moving quickly, purposefully. Someone was coming. He didn't know if it was one of the men from earlier, the woman, or someone else entirely. But Jack knew one thing. They had no more time to waste. They had to act. Quickly. Jack turned to Rex, his eyes meeting the dog's. "Stay close," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "It's time to end this." Jack's heart pounded in his chest as the figure moved closer through the trees. The darkness of the forest seemed to deepen with every step, the shadows growing longer and more oppressive. Rex was still, his amber eyes fixed on the shape emerging from the underbrush. Jack could hear the crunch of the man's boots against the forest floor, the unmistakable sound of someone who knew exactly where they were going. It wasn't just the man from earlier, this figure was different. Taller, more imposing. Jack's instincts screamed at him to move, but he stayed still, watching. Every part of him was on edge. The journal and the box, pressed tightly to his chest, felt heavier now, like they were pulling him down into the very earth beneath his feet. The man stopped about 10 feet away, his face hidden in shadow. Jack couldn't make out his features, but he could feel the menace radiating from him. Rex growled softly, but Jack put a hand on his dog's head to silence him. They needed to stay hidden. The man didn't seem to notice their presence yet, but that wouldn't last long. "I know you're out there." The man's voice was low, almost a whisper, but it carried through the trees like a thunderclap. Jack's grip tightened on the box. The man was looking for them. He knew they were close. You can't hide forever. Jack's pulse quickened. He had to act now. He couldn't let this man get any closer, couldn't let him find the box. But the man was right. Jack and Rex couldn't stay hidden for much longer. Jack's thoughts raced. He needed a plan. Fast. He knew the terrain. He knew the woods. He knew how to move silently, how to stay one step ahead. But this time, it wasn't just about hiding. This time, it was about confronting the enemy. Slowly, quietly, Jack moved backward, leading Rex in the opposite direction, away from the man. He didn't make a sound, stepping carefully over the leaves and branches. The man's voice came again, low and dangerous. "You can't run from this. You've uncovered something you're not supposed to see. Now you'll have to deal with the consequences." Jack ignored him. He couldn't afford to get caught in a conversation. They had to move, and fast. He moved toward the edge of the clearing, trying to stay as quiet as possible, all while keeping the box and journal secure. Jack could feel his breath coming faster now, his mind racing as he weighed his options. They couldn't outrun this man for long, but if they could find a safe spot to hide, they might have a chance. Then, out of nowhere, Rex barked sharply, his ears flat against his head. Jack froze, his heart stopping in his chest. The man heard it, and the forest seemed to still. For a moment, everything was silent, the only sound being Jack's own breath and the distant rustle of the trees. The man's footsteps grew louder, and Jack knew he had only seconds to act. He turned to Rex. "Stay close," he whispered, his voice tight. Without another thought, Jack dashed toward the left, moving quickly, knowing the man would be on them in an instant. They ran through the forest, branches scratching at their skin, the moonlight barely filtering through the thick canopy above. Jack could hear the man following behind them, closer now, but he kept his focus on the path ahead. Every step was calculated, every movement precise. He had trained for this moment, had prepared for something like this. He was ready, but as they reached a small hill, Jack's foot caught on a hidden root. He stumbled, his heart leaping into his throat, but he quickly regained his balance, not slowing down. Rex was right beside him, agile and quick, guiding him through the dense underbrush. They reached a small clearing, and Jack stopped for a moment to catch his breath. He glanced over his shoulder, but the man wasn't far behind. Jack scanned the area. There was no cover, no place to hide, but there was a large boulder nearby. It wasn't much, but it would have to do. Jack motioned for Rex to stay close, and they ducked behind the rock, barely a foot away from the edge. The man was close now, so close Jack could hear his labored breathing. Jack's pulse raced in his ears. He had no more time. He pressed himself against the boulder, trying to control his breath. He had to think. The man was right there. He would find them if Jack didn't act quickly. Suddenly, Jack had an idea. It was risky, but it was the only option. Slowly, he pulled out the journal and the box, and with trembling hands, he tucked them into a small crevice between the boulder and a nearby tree, hoping they would remain hidden. Then, He and Rex silently crept out from behind the boulder, moving toward the dense trees on the other side. Jack's plan was simple: lead the man away from the hiding spot. He had to create enough of a distraction to get the man off their trail. He took a deep breath and broke into a sprint, heading in the opposite direction from the hidden journal and box. Rex barked once, following Jack's lead. They dashed through the woods, the sound of their footsteps echoing in the night. The man's voice shouted from behind, "You can't run forever." Jack ignored him, pushing himself harder. They needed to buy enough time for the man to get distracted, long enough for the box and journal to remain safe. Jack's mind raced with plans, contingencies. But one thing was certain: the chase was on, and Jack was going to win. For the truth, for the secrets he had uncovered, he had no choice but to keep moving forward. Jack's lungs burned as he pushed through the thick underbrush, his heart pounding in his chest. He had gained a few precious moments, but he knew it wouldn't last. The man was behind him, and the sound of his footsteps was growing louder. Jack didn't dare look back. Rex was still with him, running just ahead, his keen senses alert, his tail high and his ears pressed forward as though trying to detect any threat. Jack didn't need to see it to know it was closing in. Every second that ticked by, the danger was becoming more real. They couldn't keep running forever. Jack's mind raced as he moved. The journal and box were hidden for now, tucked away in the crevice between the boulder and the tree. He couldn't stop to think about them, not yet. First, he had to shake off their pursuer. They had to survive this moment, but it was clear now that he was involved in something much bigger than himself. Something dangerous, something powerful. The secrets hidden in the journal and the box were no longer just about answers. They were about survival. As Jack sprinted through the forest, he tried to think of a way to lead the man away from the spot where he had hidden their most valuable possessions. His breath came in shallow bursts, his legs aching as he pushed himself harder. They were almost through the woods, but Jack had no idea what lay ahead. The trees around him blurred into streaks of dark and light as the moon began to rise higher in the sky. It was only a matter of time before the man caught up. Jack had to do something, and fast. The sound of the man's voice reached Jack's ears again, low and gruff, shouting orders, the tone filled with frustration. "You can't hide forever, you know." The voice echoed through the trees. Jack didn't dare look back. He pressed on. The only thing in his mind now was the need to get to safety. He needed to find somewhere to regroup, somewhere the man wouldn't expect him to be. But every step felt like it was leading them deeper into a trap. The terrain was unfamiliar, and Jack had no way of knowing if he was running towards safety or straight into the hands of whoever was after him. Just as his mind began to spiral, Rex stopped abruptly, his nose twitching in the air. Jack froze, his breath caught in his throat. Rex was always on edge in these moments, and Jack trusted him more than anyone. He crouched low, holding his breath, waiting to see what Rex had sensed. The forest was still, too still. Then, Jack heard it, barely a whisper at first. The sound of metal scraping against rock, followed by the unmistakable sound of footsteps. Jack's heart leapt into his throat. He didn't know who it was, but he knew one thing for certain. This wasn't the man who had been chasing them. This was something worse. The noise grew louder, and Jack could feel the hair on the back of his neck stand up. There was something unnatural about it, something that made him feel more like prey than ever before. Rex's body stiffened, his hackles raised. Jack's instincts screamed at him to get out, to run as fast as he could. But there was nowhere left to run. He had to confront whatever was coming. He drew the knife at his belt, the cool metal a small comfort in the growing tension. Rex barked once, his sharp, warning sound piercing the silence. Jack's eyes darted to the woods around them, scanning for any movement. The trees seemed to shift, the shadows growing deeper. The silence was broken by a low voice, soft, almost too soft to hear, but clear enough for Jack to make out. "You've made a mistake," the voice whispered. "You should have left it alone." Jack's grip on the knife tightened. The voice was too close, too calm. Jack stepped forward slowly, trying to make himself visible without exposing too much. The figure in the shadows remained just out of sight, but Jack could feel the presence of the person, could hear the faint sound of breath and movement. "Who are you?" Jack demanded, his voice sharp. There was no response at first, just the rustle of leaves and the faint sound of something, or someone, moving through the forest. Then, out of the darkness, the figure stepped into the dim moonlight. It was a woman, tall and imposing, her dark eyes locked on Jack with an intensity that sent a chill down his spine. Her face was obscured by a scarf, but Jack could see the cold determination in her eyes. She didn't speak at first, just watched him, her gaze calculating. "I've been waiting for you," she finally said, her voice almost a purr. "I knew you would come here." Jack's hand instinctively tightened around the knife, though he didn't take his eyes off her. "What do you want from me?" he asked, his voice low but unwavering. The woman took a step closer, her steps slow but deliberate. "You found something that was never meant to be found," she said. "And now you'll have to deal with the consequences." Jack felt a knot form in his stomach. He wasn't sure who this woman was, but one thing was certain, she wasn't here to help. "What do you want with the box?" Jack demanded. She smiled, a chilling smile that didn't reach her eyes. "The box," she said, "is just the beginning. You've no idea what you've unleashed." Jack didn't flinch. "I'm not afraid of you." The woman's smile faded, replaced by a cold, hard expression. "You should be." Jack's pulse thundered in his ears as the woman's cold smile lingered in the air, an ominous promise of what was to come. He didn't flinch, but every instinct in his body screamed that this was the moment he had been dreading. The forest around them seemed to shrink, the darkness pressing in as if the trees themselves were witnesses to the confrontation. Rex stood firm by Jack's side, his body stiff, ready to act at a moment's notice. The woman's eyes never left Jack. "You don't know who you're dealing with," she said softly, stepping closer, her every movement calculated. "The secrets inside that box will make or break everything. The people who are behind this don't care about right or wrong. They care about control." Jack clenched his jaw, trying to ignore the fear creeping up his spine. He had come too far to back down now. "I'm not giving it to you," he said, his voice steady, but the tremor of uncertainty was hard to mask. The woman's smile faded, replaced by a look of cold calculation. "It's not about what you want," she said, her voice dark, like a thread hanging in the air. "You've already made your choice by opening the box. Now, you'll face the consequences." Jack's mind raced as he thought of the journal, the box, the mysterious forces closing in on him. The truth inside could change everything, but it could also destroy him if he wasn't careful. "What exactly do you think you can do?" Jack challenged, stepping back slightly, placing himself between the woman and the box hidden in the bushes nearby. He wasn't going to let her take it, not without a fight. The woman didn't respond immediately, but Jack could see the flicker of something in her eyes, something darker than fear. It was resolve. She was prepared to do whatever it took to get the box back. Jack swallowed hard. There was no more room for hesitation. He had to act, and fast. Before he could make a move, the woman's hand darted to her side, drawing something from beneath her jacket. Jack's breath caught as he saw the glint of a weapon, a small, silenced pistol. "You don't want to do this," Jack said, raising his hand slightly, trying to stall her. "You can't stop me." The woman's lips twisted into a sneer. "You think this is a game?" she asked coldly. "You're not prepared for what's coming." Her finger tightened on the trigger, and Jack instinctively ducked. The shot rang out, sharp and deafening in the silence of the forest, but Jack was already moving. He dove to the ground, rolling behind a thick tree trunk for cover. Rex barked, launching himself at the woman with a ferocity Jack had never seen before. The woman was momentarily distracted as Rex lunged at her, snapping his jaws, forcing her to take a step back. Jack didn't waste a second. He rushed forward, his knife drawn, and in one fluid motion, he was at her side. The woman turned just in time to see Jack coming for her, and her eyes flashed with fear. But it was too late. Jack's hand shot out, knocking the pistol from her grasp. It clattered to the ground, and before she could react, Jack had her pinned against the tree. "You're not in control here anymore," Jack said, his voice low but filled with determination. "Tell me what's in that box." The woman struggled for a moment but then stopped, her breath shallow, her chest heaving. She looked up at Jack, and for the first time, he saw the faintest hint of vulnerability in her eyes. "You really don't understand," she said softly, almost regretfully. "This isn't just about you. It's about everyone." Jack's grip tightened, but he didn't speak. He wasn't going to let her play games with him anymore. "They're going to kill you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "You're nothing more than a pawn in this. They'll take everything from you." Jack's mind raced as the gravity of her words sank in. This wasn't just a fight for survival. It was a fight for something much larger. The woman's words weren't just threats. They were warnings. Whoever was behind this conspiracy wasn't going to stop until they had what they wanted. And Jack, with the box and the journal, had just become their target. Who are they? Jack demanded. Who's behind this? The woman's eyes flickered. For a moment, Jack thought she might finally tell him the truth. But then her expression hardened once more. You'll find out soon enough, she said cryptically. Jack's grip tightened again, but just then, the distant sound of approaching footsteps reached their ears. They weren't alone anymore. The woman's eyes flashed with a knowing look. They're coming for you, she said coldly. You should have left when you had the chance. Jack looked at her, his heart racing. He knew he had to make a choice, and fast. The men who had been chasing him were closer than ever, and if he didn't act now, everything would be lost. He didn't know what was in the box, but he knew one thing. It had to stay hidden. Jack quickly backed away, pulling the woman along with him. I'll find out the truth, he said firmly, looking her in the eye. And I'll make sure it stays hidden, no matter what it takes. The woman's smirk returned, but there was something different about it now, something almost resigned. Good luck with that, she said. You'll need it. With one final push, Jack left her behind, sprinting into the night, Rex at his side. The truth was waiting, and so was the danger. But Jack wasn't running anymore. He was ready to face whatever came next. Veteran stories have always captivated audiences with their raw emotion and intense action, and this thrilling tale is no exception. In this gripping narrative, a determined veteran embarks on a journey that uncovers a dangerous secret from the past. As he races through the forest with his loyal dog, they face threats that push them to their limits. The veteran must confront shadowy figures and unravel a conspiracy tied to an ancient mystery. Every step he takes draws him closer to the truth, but at a steep cost. With the stakes higher than ever, this veteran story keeps readers on the edge of their seat. The powerful combination of danger, suspense, and the personal struggle of the veteran creates a narrative that is impossible to put down. In the end, this veteran story reveals that the fight for survival is not just physical, but also a battle for the truth. As the story reaches its climax, the veteran learns that uncovering hidden secrets can come with a price, and the forces he has awakened will stop at nothing to silence him. If you love veteran stories filled with intense action, compelling characters, and a storyline that twists and turns, this story will keep you hooked from beginning to end. Whether you're a fan of thrilling military adventures or just enjoy a gripping narrative, this veteran story will not disappoint. Discover the world of high-stakes battles in this unforgettable tale.